Welcome to BTH with Dr. Q. In this entry, we are joined by Dr. Greame Lategan. Now, if you are an avid listener of this podcast, you would know that I don't usually do intros, but I just have to do it on this specific one. And you'll find out why I'm doing this as the show continues. And I have Dr. Lategan's biography in front of me. So, Dr. Greame Lategan is an internationally acclaimed corporate trainer, a keynote speaker, and culture strategist with over 30 years of expertise transforming leaders, teams, and organizations across Africa and the Middle East. Renowned for his bold thinking and radically human approach, Greame empowers leadership teams to thrive in volatile, complex environments by activating emotional intelligence, adaptive strategy, and value based cultures. His global training footprint spans public and private sectors, helping organizations move beyond compliance toward conscious high performance leadership. Whether on stage or in the boardroom, his message is clear: real leadership begins within. Greame, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks very much, Dr. Q, man. I've been long since watching you. Now I'm glad we've met. Appreciate it. It's an honor to be with you.
I'm super excited to actually have you here because I've got so many questions for you. As
Rock
you would
away.
know,
Yeah.
we are going to be talking about the state of the Nelson Mandela Bay
Yes.
Municipality. And just as we were having a conversation earlier, I was sharing with you that I was driving past the airport and street lights were not working. But
Yes.
before we even get into the meat of the conversation, I would love for you to actually give me and my listener a sense of who Greime is without having to refer to the bio that I have here in front of me.
Thank you. Yes, that's already a mouthful. I really appreciate the bio. Yes, it never gets old, these bios, and some of them differ from stage to stage. But thank you very much, Doc. I really appreciate it. So a little bit about me. From the bio, obviously, you know who I am and what I do for a living. That's kind of what my function is, and how I make my that's my lifestyle, and it's kind of how I make my living. I've served in government for about 35 odd years prior to the training industry that I'm in right now. So I've operated right at the bottom, straight right to the top at executive director kind of level in municipalities and as well in provincial governments. And my speciality was law enforcement, actually. I actually came from a law enforcement policing background. Way back as a young man, I was thrust into the correctional services. And then so I worked my way through government and eventually into city policing and traffic services and so forth and so forth. And then into general government as a director in various provinces across South Africa and in some of the municipalities. But yeah, that's kind of the government background and the public service. And I used that to stimulate my career in training. And I'm very grateful for the government and the public service that gave me such a wide knowledge of subjects that I could kind of spend time on. I specialize in management and leadership. That's my core focus. That's what I go around the world talking about. And I'm currently busy with my second PhD, my PhD in management and leadership, adaptive management. Yes, and I'm now also entering the political field for for obvious reasons. The state of Nelson Mandela. As a concerned citizen, I was approached and I put my name forward, and I've joined the Freedom Front Plus on my next journey, if I can call it that, Doc. So I'll be entering the 2026 elections as a potential candidate for them as a ward councillor. Yeah, that's really where
that's
I
just
am.
beautiful.
Yeah,
that's
fantastic.
Beautiful. Now, I don't want to rush the conversation, rather. And where I would like to start is, do you see yourself as the next Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi, or do you feel like you've been actually Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi? Do you relate to everything that's going on right now, in as far as this political higi haga is concerned?
Yeah, it's for the most part, South Africans follow politics from let's call it from the armchair. if you understand where I'm coming from. So people will sit on their lounge or at the braais or at the social functions, whatever the case may be. And everybody and anybody has comments about various political issues in our country. I mean, it's not an uncommon thing. And we're such a diverse kind of nation, that everybody has or is opinionated about politics in South Africa. But it's a complicated process. I think we're in a very critical space right now in the world. Obviously, from the national elections now going in from a GNU perspective, now it's
Yeah.
the first elections after that, space that take. So it's going to be interesting. So that's why I'm actually in it. But I am very serious about the process. Very, very serious.
And before I get into the political affiliation that you've decided to venture into,
Yes.
I'm interested to know about your time in government. You were in the law enforcement previously. Did you serve in the correctional services or SAPS? And can you just expand more on your experience
Sure, no
while
problem.
you were there? And
It's-
one important question
Yes,
while you were there,
yes.
was it post or before democracy?
Wow, that's a brilliant question. So I served in both eras. I look this young because I'm married to a young wife. Okay, but that being said, so post 1994.
Post
Let's call it pre
1994.
1994. Let's call pre 1994. Let's go there first. Pre
Okay.
1994, I entered the correctional service. A very young man, 15 years old. Came out of school, left school in standard 8. What is that grade? 6, 7, 8, 9, and somewhere around there, 9 or so, 10, grade 10. I can never get the grades right, Doc. But anyway, standard 8, and those years military was you were conscripted to the military, in the apartheid era, and every, if we can call it, young man that's coming out of school had to go to the military for a 2-year period. You could either serve in the South African Police Services or the Correctional Services as, can we call it, as a parallel to that. And I come from a very, very poor family. So at that time, I was an orphan as well. My brother and sister and I were orphaned at a very young age. So I was then put into the correctional service, where I have a family background whose family were in the correctional services many, many, many years before that. So it seemed the natural path for me. So I served there for about 5 years, and then I joined the traffic services, the then Cape Provincial Traffic Services, when the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape were one kind of province. I don't know if you can recall that.
I was not born at that time.
Well, you're not born. Yeah, they called it the Cape of Good Hope. I think that was what it was called. The
Wait,
Cape
sorry. So the Cape
Yeah.
of Good Hope was both the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape combined.
It was one province at the time. I mean, they separated border Eastern Province and Western Province at the time, for rugby and soccer and I don't know what, not all cricket.
Jesus
yeah,
Christmas.
Yeah.
I really thought that the Eastern Cape was the Ciskei and the Transkei. I never knew that it was part of the Western Cape.
Never, no. So
So
within
is that
the Eastern Cape, so within the Eastern Cape, they had the Ciskei. I loved the Ciskei at the time, because it was all something you could drive through, if you know what I'm getting at. As a provincial traffic officer, you were crossing the border into another country. So it was quite a thing. And then the Transkei was, we used to observe one another across the Kai Bridge as a young man. But so the Transkei and the Ciskei were homelands, for the term that they used, but separately governed and had their own parliaments, etc. That's how it operated. And then from there, then I went into provincial traffic and eventually into the municipal traffic in East London, now known as Buffalo City or Buffalo Metro. And I think they're calling it Kugompo now, if I'm not mistaken. But that's correct. So then I continued my law enforcement career and then went into provincial government. And then it was still in the policing, law enforcement background. I exited the municipality as the head of city police in East London. Served as a deputy director in provincial government, roads and transport. And there I began to kind of, you carve out my expertise in multiple departments. I was managed by a fantastic guy by the name of Nkululeko Poya. He was a young engineer. He was like 28, 29, 30, somewhere around there. I can't remember. He was a phenomenal manager. And he used to thrust you into supply chain and all sorts of departments, finance and all these departments. And you had to kind of slip around. From there on, I went into a directorship in the Northwest Province, again into public safety. And then from there, I began my career in the training field. I left there in, I think it was Mafeking, Northwest Province, around about 2014. Yeah. And obviously, I felt I wanted to work for myself, and training was always a passion that I really had. And that's how I started. Yeah. So that was my government experience. So I exited as an executive director. But I went into the municipality for a very short sabbatical, into 2023, into one of the Western Cape municipalities. Very short stint, not even a year. That culture didn't work well for me, and I came back to my business. And I'm back in Beha, the GQ.
Once you get a taste of liberation and having to have a say on how you manage your time, you don't want anybody to dictate how you're going to manage your time.
Amen to that.
With what you've just said, I suppose another important question for me would be just you contrasting the state of government during that time that you served as an office bearer in SAPS versus now in 2026. How would you contrast the two? I would say these are two eras, so to say, because one was pre-1994 and shortly after 1994.
100%.
And then 30 years later, we are where we are.
No, it's a phenomenal question. So pre-1994, apartheid. You were in a bubble. As a, if I could call myself a young white South African male, you were oblivious to it. It was happening, but as a young guy, I didn't really give it any attention. It was not something that you lived by. Yes, you saw the signs of apartheid, whites only, things like that, and slaps blankers, this kind of thing. And it never really registered, but you knew it existed. I never voted, so I probably, I never had an election. I can't even recall that I ever voted, in that time. Obviously, as a young man as well. So you were blind, and you were probably, I would say, for lack of a better term, you were kept away from the politics of the day, where it became very, I would say, where we began to start to take notice of what was happening in our country was then in the late 80s. We had various bombings in East London and uprisings, etc., which gave rise to the notion that apartheid is a very alive, if you understand what I'm getting at. But working in the correctional services, I worked alongside black male officers for many years. Some of them were my supervisor. Well, not necessarily Nkululeko. I'm talking now in correctional services. This is when I was 16, 17, going on 18, 19. You know what I'm saying? They were my managers. I remember a lieutenant by the name of Lieutenant Decor. I had various sergeants that I reported to that were African. So it did not register with us that you were separate under any circumstances. And then I left the correctional services, went into provincial traffic services, and there I had coloured male officers that were my supervisor. They used to give me grief, man. They used to make me stand on attention and salute them, and I don't know what. And then they ordered me around, and I never had any inclination that we were separate. I never.
This is new information.
Yes, this was maybe what would you call it? Is it unconscious bias? I don't know what the term would be.
I wouldn't say it's unconscious bias, but I wanted to say this is new information for me because
Yes.
I've never actually, maybe it is unconscious bias actually,
I'm
because
not quite sure. Yeah.
it had never occurred to me that you'd get a person of color actually leading a white person back in the day. I
It
find that
happened to
quite
me.
fascinating.
Yes. I mean, they were if you want to call it non-white officers and non-white correctional service officers, for that matter, were promoted. In those days, you were not promoted by interview like today. You had to apply for a job, and you were
Mm,
then, you had to apply and go to an interview. No, no, no. You got a
mhm,
promotion on merit. So you had to rate yourself, and you had to do your own performance assessments, and then you'd stand in front of the majors and the colonels, and then I remember I went for my first promotion and I failed, and they said, sorry, you're not good enough to be a sergeant. See you in a year's time, kind of thing. And I
Ooh.
eventually made it, but yeah, so I suppose it's irony, Dr. Q. Maybe you unconsciously, consciously blind. I don't know if that's even a term. Um, but during my provincial traffic days, there was one or two comments that were raised. You know what I mean? Our coloured officers would raise the issue of still apartheid and things like it, but it still didn't register. I mean, they were in control. I mean, I was reported to them. So yeah,
Mm,
that's kind of the thing. But after that, after 1994, when we started to, I remember one of the turning points for me, when I really became aware of the issues in South Africa, was the uprising in the Ciskei, the previous Ciskei. I don't know if you recall that. It was by the then ruler, who was Oupa Gozo. And if you can recall him, in history will tell you, he was one of the most ruthless rulers, ruled with the iron fist.
who is
And
that?
it was Oupa Gozo. Oupa Gozo. That's how I knew him. Oupa Gozo. He was head of the Ciskei at the time.
Okay.
And there was a massacre that took place in the Bishu area at the time. Then it registered. Then it
Hmm.
registered that we have got a lot of problems in our country. Yeah.
What was happening? I would love for you to expand there. You also
Well,
spoke about the explosions.
obviously it was a protest march, and they were marching to the Ciskei Bishu government.
Mm,
In all honesty, I have to go back on my history. It's been a while, but they were demanding, equal rights, opportunities, etc., that kind of thing. And I remember it. I was on duty in King Williamstown at the time as a traffic officer, sort of like in the back line. We were doing traffic for the police who were entering and monitoring that. Then you would meet the Ciskei police at the border, and they would then thousands of people. I'll never forget it. It was
yeah.
a sight to behold.
Mm,
And then the shooting occurred, and yeah, a lot of people were terribly hurt. Some were killed as they ran and fled from the Ciskei, the Bishu area, back to King Williamstown at the time. And
mm,
the gunfire, I can still hear if I close my eyes. It was ongoing for it's like forever. It was it was
mm,
it was a terrible time in the history of our country. Um,
mm,
Obviously, this was a time when we had to amalgamate the former homelands back into South Africa, if that makes sense to you. One of the other defining moments in that exact area was the mass shooting at a golf club, which was termed terrorist attack at the time. But yeah, but nothing compares to all the other problems that we were blind to in South Africa,
mm,
if
mm.
you understand.
Yeah, yeah, I
Apartheid.
get
Yeah.
it. But I would love to know during that time, you spoke about the explosions that were taking place in East London. I think was
Yes.
it called Buffalo City at the time?
No, it was
Well,
called East London. Yeah, it was a
it was still called
beautiful
East
town.
London.
Yes, it was
In
a
East
beautiful
London
town. Very
or Gombo City now, and
Composite.
and now you are giving me the
Yeah.
context of Bisho. There
Yes.
were mass killings in Bisho, but who was doing the killing and who were dying? Was it your black population or was
Yes,
it
your
your
black
white
pop,
population?
your black protesters were dying. Well, the black protesters, not yours. The black protesters were dying.
Mm,
They were
mm,
shot. They were hurt. They were coming across fences. They raised this massive barbed wire fences, to kind of protect and make sure that people went in a certain direction. Um, and it was the then Ciskei Armed Forces, or if we can call it the Ciskei Army at the time, that laid fire on the running away of the protesters, or shall I say
Yeah.
the protesters that were running away. But I was not on site, so I can't tell you who pulled the triggers.
Yeah.
But it was very traumatic. It was a hell of an experience to go through. You know what I mean? And then later, when we withdrew, you would see it on the news, the actual
Mm.
extent. And today, there's memorials there for those people. Yeah,
Oh,
I think I
damn.
was there. I was there about 2 years ago when I worked
Mm.
in Bishu for a client, and I actually just popped past. It's right there by the stadium. Phenomenal.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah,
Uh, that's actually very sad.
that's
And
it's yeah,
I can even see
traumatic.
as you give me this narrative, I can see your facial expression literally changing. But
Yeah.
pardon me for that. I would also want to know, in addition to you having experienced that, you mentioned
Yes.
that you didn't have an idea of what was going on in as far as apartheid was concerned
Mm.
until those events actually occurred. What were you learning as part of your history when you were still in primary and high school? Because I would think that would be topical in that subject.
Yes. Yeah, we obviously learned. Well, remember, I didn't complete high school, so I left it Saturday. So it's very important to know that in primary school in the day, you were learning to read and write, art, creative, and history. And if I can recall, 1652, the 1820 settlers landed, and so forth and so forth, and Jan van Riebeeck, and your standard history. And one of the most interesting topics for me ever was Shaka Zulu, the prominent king, and then fighting the Boers, and etc. Crossover, and the mighty Shaka Zulu. I'll never forget later in my young life watching the series. It was phenomenal. I don't know if you've ever seen the series of Shaka Zulu. If you haven't, you've got to watch it.
I
It
have.
was phenomenal. Was it portrayed by Henry Twele, if I can't remember? Yeah, if I can remember. Yeah, it was phenomenal, phenomenal acting. So that's what we were learning in school, at the time. I was more involved in sports. Soccer and cricket was kind of my game,
Mm,
But in standard five, if I can call it standard five for me, my father worked in Nelson Mandela Municipality, as a matter of interest. He was as a younger man, he was a taxi driver, and he then, in my life, was a bus driver for the municipality, and eventually became a bus conductor, and later an inspector. And so by the time I was ending the standard five primary school, ending my primary school on my way to high school, I was at an all-time high as a
mm.
young man. Everything was going well for me. And my father lost his job. And while I can remember vividly him walking to fetch me at Greenwood Primary School, which is, one of the nostalgic kind of areas that I visit often, he would say to me that he would have to travel to Joburg. That would be the last time I would see him. He died on the job
Oh no,
a taxi operator. Died at his desk.
my
He
apologies.
collapsed. Yeah,
Mm,
and then a year later, 2 years later, my mother passed away. So going out of primary school into high school, I was emotionally, traumatically affected. I tell the story often, and I'm quite happy to share it. So those were the days. You didn't go and see therapists. You never saw psychologists. You never saw, you never got help. I was emotionally traumatized as a young child. You must think I was 13 years old, highly impoverished. We were not very wealthy people by any means. So my grandmother and well, actually my grand aunt and my grand uncle had to take care of us. So we became orphans of the state that time. And they
mm.
would then put us into boarding school, and I would then go to Somerset East, and that would be some of the worst times of my life. So going into school, if I tell you what I learned, I can't even recall. I mean, history was not even a subject of mine. I just managed to get through English. I was dramatically, affected. There was a hell of a lot of trauma going through my life. And then I went through massive abuse in that school. It was high levels of bullying in that school, for 3 years, until eventually I was taken out of school, and I went to the correctional services. So my life kind of turned around from there. But yeah, it was prevalent there. For me, the knowledge of we are now living in different times. We are living in an apartheid era. We're going to cross over into a democracy. Happened obviously with the release of the late Nelson Mandela, who I met one time, as a matter of interest, in East
Oh,
London.
that's lovely.
In fact, twice. I'll never forget it, but a story a bit later for that. So, cut a long story short, that's how I became aware of it. And then there was a referendum, if you can remember. And I became very knowledgeable about politics in the day, because then the then Prime Minister, P.W. Botha and F.W. de Klerk went through a process of change, and they released Nelson Mandela. And that's when apartheid was very clear to every
Mm,
South African.
mm.
Every South African.
I will come back to Mandela, but I would love to draw nearer to what has actually brought us together, the Nelson Mandela Bay
Sure.
Municipality. You mentioned that your dad
Yes.
served here in Nelson Mandela Bay, and I'd love to get a sense of how this municipality was like. I'm in Gqeberha, by the way.
Okay.
I might just be a neighbor. I don't know.
We are
And
close to one another. Ward 8.
oh, interesting. So,
Yes.
I'd love to know. Back in the day, I remember I always had this fascination about
Mm.
PE around 2002. I didn't even know what the fascination was, but I very well remember reading about Port Elizabeth.
Yes.
My grandfather is a sucker for newspapers. I buy newspapers all the
Wow. So
damn
do
time
I.
as
Still
well.
buy them.
And I'm going to refer to an article that I read this morning, by the way, as we
Wow.
continue with the
Amazing.
conversation. So,
Yeah.
what I saw there was this municipality was actually scooping awards for being one of the cleanest and well managed
Go
cities
figure.
in the world. What happened? How was it then? And how would you contrast it with what we are seeing now?
Wow. It's an amazing question. So there's kind of different avenues, if I can not get too long-winded about it, but it's historically nostalgic to me. On this basis, you must remember that I experienced Port Elizabeth as a very young man, as a very young child for that matter. So anything from 13 down was my age group. So I remember the beachfront. I mean, it was just fantastic. Port Elizabeth beachfront was something to behold. I'll never forget the first time I saw the super tube. It was like something from outer space. You know, the super tube down on King's Beach right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a first for Port Elizabeth. I remember the phenomenal restaurants that you could walk to, on the beachfront. You could just buy burgers, and it was just fantastic. I remember Happy Valley. I don't know if you've ever been to Happy Valley. So it would be without fail. You would visit Happy Valley, and it would be just a family affair. You could walk through there. It was clean, the water, the music. I remember Candy Floss under the bridge, the soft white sand, walking onto the hot sand, swimming in the ocean. Thousands of people. I remember walking on the beachfront. So they were phenomenal. They were just great places. Um, and I remember, the Hobie beaches, the hotels that were just thriving in those areas. Holiday Inns, those you don't get anymore. They've all
Mm,
changed to other Southern Sun or something like that. But so I remember walking around. So I lived in Central. So Central was a thing for me. I played at the Fort Frederick, right up on the hill there. The bushes were lush, the grass was green, the city was clean. I walked the streets at night as a
mm,
child. I mean, go figure. Completely, maybe stupidity reigned that you just didn't know better, and you were living in your own little bubble as a child. But it was I used to ride my bicycle through the streets. It was phenomenal. Thousands, probably I'm a little exaggerating, but hundreds of kids playing on the pavement. You don't see that anymore. You
mm,
just don't get that. And so I judge, if I can use the term judge, I judge PE from as a young man to where I am right now, Port Elizabeth,
mm,
Gqeberha, GQ. And most of those places you cannot walk in the broad daylight with the
mm,
security police force around you. I mean, it's overridden well, at the moment, we've got a lot of foreigners living in those areas. It's very drug ridden. It's hardly policed. Those are the kind of, I'm talking about central Port Elizabeth now. Today I bought a TV bar, Dr. Q, a TV bar. You know, the chocolate TV bar. Do you
Yeah.
remember? Well, I don't know, you were too young at the time, maybe not even born, but I remember the first time a TV bar came out, and I went and bought that in Ring Street. You know, Ring Street. It's
Yeah.
where then cinemas used to be. We used to run around and walk around in the Central Park, where St. George's Park is right now. We used to run around there at night time as young children. Then we left. Obviously, I went through my period, my traumatic period. I was off to the correctional services, obviously in boarding school, and then to the correctional services. So I experienced Aliwal North and the Free State, and then East London, now Cookholm. So I actually spent most of my young adulthood going into probably my late 30s. I experienced East London, and that on par was one of the cleanest places I've ever seen in my entire life. I don't know when last you've been to East London. If you've never been there, it was a city that you could eat off the streets. I'm melodramatic, but that's how clean that city was. It was well run. They had fantastic events. It was just a beautiful place to live. Obviously, then we went through the transition. I then experienced 1994 in East London, and obviously a lot of the uprisings, etc., and the protests, and that's when we began to change as a country. So I watched it change, but even then there was an incident, and then the next day you were back at the beach, kind of thing. you
Yeah.
know. So when for me, when I left that era and I went to the Northwest Province, I saw what decay was in our country. I experienced Mafeking. I don't know if you've ever been there. I
Mahikeng now.
experienced
What was
Mahikeng,
happening there?
yes. Yeah. Well, it's imploded. I mean, I stayed in a town called Lichtenburg. If you've never been there, it's about 60 k's away from Mahikeng, and it has imploded. It doesn't exist. I mean, it's just like there's no water, there's no electricity. The roads, you can literally plant trees in it. I'm sure we can get one of the people to go and swim in the potholes, because I see that's a trend now.
That actually sounds like Port Elizabeth and in inverted commas,
Yeah.
Helen, right in front,
Okay.
right behind
There you
me.
go. I didn't want to mention the name, but you did. So yeah. And then coming to P, my wife Charmaine and I, we relocated to P from Mahikeng, 2014. We were happy to come here because it was better than East London, because East London had then by that time just imploded. It's just become absolutely ungovernable, badly managed, bad political leadership going on in East London. And I've watched Port Elizabeth just deteriorate, just go backwards. So yeah, that's kind of where I am. It's not the city it can be. It's where I am. That's what I'm kind of very, very disturbed about.
Graham, I need to make this disclaimer. For the benefit of this podcast and
Yes.
for the benefit of the viewers, I would argue, this is absolutely not a promotion
Not at
for
all.
your candidacy as a ward councillor.
You can make that
The reason why we're having this particular conversation is because we just see that there's serious changes that are negatively skewed in the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality.
100%.
And
Yes.
Graham right here is the person to talk about that. It could have been anyone.
It can be. I'm very fortunate to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I needed to make that disclaimer.
Not a problem.
So I wanna go back to 2017. There's one thing I'm gonna tell you, Graham. I came back to PE in 2023, mid 2023, And I came back because I actually missed the city. I loved it when I was there in 2017, 2018, 2019. I
Yes,
still felt
yes,
like it was well managed, even though there were complaints from people that had been here longer. But it
yes.
was nothing compared to what it is now. Now, when I drive around the Summerstone area, humid, warmer, I feel like the city has seriously deteriorated, and it is definitely not what I had in mind when I took that decision to leave Johannesburg and come to Port Elizabeth.
I hear
And
you.
the question for me is, how did we get here? You are now contesting to be a ward councillor, and obviously you want to make change.
That's
But
correct.
how did we get here? Because in order for you to instill some change, even if it is within a small or a larger community, you have to
Correct.
understand the context of what has happened in the city. Can you just give me a brief
Sure.
summary of what you think went
It's
wrong?
it's it's common. It's absolutely common. It's common knowledge for that matter. So if you go to the previous election of Nelson Mandela Bay, well, let's call it municipal elections around the country, 2022, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there. Then there was 2017, 2016. So um, I've been here for, this is my 12th year, if I can use that as the point of reference. So we depart from there. Coming into Nelson Mandela Bay, it wasn't a brilliant, can I say, phenomenal place, but I love Nelson Mandela Bay. I love the Eastern Cape, and I love Port Elizabeth.
Mm.
Um, I would live anywhere in the Eastern Cape if I could, if obviously if I could find employment. But the point that I'm trying to make for reference is Nelson Mandela Bay has deteriorated with, let's say, two or three main issues. Number one, management and leadership.
Mm.
So there is a massive, can I call it, abyss of skilled managers and skilled leadership inside the city itself with regards to the municipality. So most of the positions are acting positions in the municipality. We can't fill those jobs. And
Mm.
that tells you a big story of any organization. Imagine you run a business and you can't afford a
Mm.
CEO, and you're constantly going through a CEO positions and trying to. I mean, Ethel Trollop said it a while ago. What's it? 5 or 6 city managers, 7 or 8 mayors. We can't keep our directors, and they are constantly fighting with one another because they're acting in positions. One acts this time, one acts that time.
Mm.
So there's no real leadership. So that's the big problem.
Mm.
That's number one. Number two is the ability to perform. So the municipality from 4 years ago, 8 years ago, is no longer the municipality that we have right now. There is just
Yeah.
a complete lack of accountability and performance from officials in the municipality. Now, I must say this, that we have got some brilliant people in this municipality. There are some fantastic. I would say 60 to 70% of our municipal officials are phenomenally skilled, highly trained, excellent individuals, but they just cannot get the job done because of bureaucracy. That's the third problem.
Mm.
Bureaucracy, red tape, and politics and political intervention. That is the order of the day. So if you want to know
Mm.
why a city doesn't work, it's because the lines are blurred between politics and administration. You see, politics plays an oversight role, and administration must get on with the job. As a politician, you are there to oversee that the projects are rolled out and that the money is well spent. That's kind of what's happening. So those three things are where we are now in fact, that's where we are as a country. I mean, in most metros, that is the order of the day. So we're finding massive breakdowns: water, electricity, sewage, three main things. We would consider them basic human rights, but we should not in 2026 be having this problem
Yeah.
anywhere in our country. We should not be. And then there is the unseen issues that we are having as well, Dr. Q. It is the mind shift. We are struggling to get on as politicians. There's so much infighting. There's so much, backwards and forwards, this coalition, that problem, this majority, this issue. And for the best part, most of the politicians have been fighting one another for 8 years. I mean, it's a relevant point that I'm making, because we can't hold on to our mayors. There's always a vote of no confidence. We can't hold on to our leadership, that kind of thing. We can't fill positions. We can't get budgets passed. So therein lies our dilemma. If I have to culminate that into one thing, we are struggling as a country to manage and lead in municipalities, and we are struggling as a country to politically allow people to operate inside municipalities so that they can get the job done, so we can just oversee it. So that's where I find myself right now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And thank you very much for that perspective. I am thinking about the Summerstrand area. I'm going to use it as a point of reference here, because in as much as I find myself on the other side, I work a lot in Summerstrand by virtue of me obviously working at the university. So for the past 2 or 3 weeks, I know that people haven't had water there, and electricity has been very problematic. They haven't had electricity for over 2 weeks. 100%. And the question that I have again is, what leads us to getting there? I know you are not in government currently of the city, but I think you would be clued up as to how we have gotten there, and maybe perhaps how we can work towards actually ensuring that what we've been experiencing doesn't happen. We are not exempt, by the way, on this side, because I think earlier in the year, in February or January, there were pylons that supposedly just fell, and for affected. 2 weeks we didn't have power. So can you just shed light on that? How do you avoid such situations?
Well, before you can avoid it, you have to know that the problem exists. It's not I won't be the first person to say that the first thing to solve, or the first way to solve a problem, is understanding that you have one. If you get what I'm getting at. So let's separate politics from administration. Let's separate that. Let's just work on a municipality right now. Let's say you own the municipality, and let's say you were the CEO of this municipality. You would then employ managers to perform specific functions, like electricity, like water, like sanitation, etc. The basic things that you and I take for granted and we pay for anyway on a monthly basis. And let's say you observe that your refuse has not been removed on a particular day. You get what I'm saying? Now, automatically somebody's going to complain about that. That would be the end user. That's the customer. That's the resident. So the customer complains, my refuse has not been collected. Now, the first issue is, where does the customer complain to? Do they complain to an app, which is volatile? Do they complain to a phone, which nowadays is not answered? And do they know who they're complaining to? Is there a department that they can actually call phone? You understand what I'm getting at? So what I'm getting at is, the CEO now is not even aware that there's a problem. You're not even aware that there's an issue going on, that the refuse has not been collected. And the reason for that is the communication from the bottom all the way to the top. And therein lies a lot of issues inside municipalities. But yes, where it gets even more interesting. There are no people inside this area to actually do the job. And those that are there are actually not doing the job. And whatever we might have there might not be skilled to do the job. Let me give you an example. Let's say you employ traffic officers or metro police officers, and you, by virtue of their appointment, they must be able to use a firearm, they must be declared competent, and they must go through training. It's like putting people on the street that are not competent to use a firearm, and you give them one anyway. You understand? And these are the kind of issues that we are experiencing inside municipalities. Right, so let's go to the electricity issue. The reason why we don't have electricity, the reason why we don't have water, is because it's not being managed. There's no oversight. Now, it's not a politician's job to actually do that. I should be sitting in council hearing what we are spending our money on and the projects that are coming up and how that money is being well spent, so that I can tell the residents, hey, you are being taken care of. These are the projects that are coming up for your particular areas, etc., etc. Instead, you've got politicians running around trying to fix these things, which shouldn't be. That's a municipal function. It's a municipal skilled function. It's an expertise that lies within the municipality. Now, the next issue is we've outsourced, what, 50, 60, maybe 70% of those things. Your grass is not being cut. Your roads are not being tarred. Your water is not being cleared because it's all outsourced to contractors. Now, inside the municipality, you've got people that are supposed to oversee that. It's called contract management. I mean, this is not a complicated process. So the contracts now lapse. And it takes you a year plus to renew those contracts. Some people are going to say that I'm exaggerating, but this is a fact. I've worked in municipalities. That's how long it takes you, because you've got to go to bid committees after one another, and appoint contractors. So there is a lack of management right at the top to oversee their departments, to be able to manage these core functions that a municipality is supposed to provide, that it shouldn't outsource in the first place, by the way, that it's supposed to provide, irrespective of any political affiliation or who runs the municipality politically. The municipality on its own must be able to function holistically. So we do not have healthy leadership and management and accountability and responsibility. That's why you don't have electricity and water. So imagine a pylon. I mean, if a pylon, you've got Eskom back in the day, if I can use it, let's call it 15, 20 years ago, used to inspect their pylons. They used to go and inspect this. Why has it not been done today is the question we must ask. So this is the reason why you don't have these things, because there's just no management and leadership. There's just no accountability. And how do we fix it? I know that's your next question. How do you fix it?
Of course.
Well, we shouldn't be running around as political parties trying to fix this. We should be sitting back and say, look, we are a political party A, political party B, political party C, and we are looking for your vote. So we are your voice in council. Game, set, match. And we're going to see to it that the municipality does its job that it's supposed to do. It's always been like that through the ages. But what we need in municipality is expertise. We need to fill the positions of the engineers. We need to make sure those jobs are filled with adequate and qualified people. We can't retain our talent. We need to be able to retain our talent, equip our talent with the best resources, fund that, provide them with the money. Because if you phone the Parks Department today and you say to them, please go and cut the cemeteries, they're going to say to you, sorry, we got no money. That shouldn't happen in a municipality. So my thing is, from a political perspective, notwithstanding any party, is performance of a municipality. And the way you can fix this is to ensure that the municipality and the staff are doing are performing to the standards that we are expecting as a municipality or as residents. Do you know that the municipality's top directors have KPAs and KPIs? Obviously. I mean, it's not, they sign contracts with the city manager, and those overseen by the city manager, specific directors, as well as political parties, they call it the MACO, who then have to judge those particular directors based on their key performance indicators and key performance areas. And I think that's where the problem lies as well. I think their KPAs and their KPIs are not aligned to what is expected of them inside the municipality. And I think that is why I'm trying to get involved here, so I can go see what's inside the KPAs. You will only fix this municipality or any municipality for that matter, when you can hold the municipal officials accountable for performance. Game, set, and match. It's not as simple as that. I shouldn't, as a political affiliate to anybody, any political party, doesn't matter who they are. If you stood up, Dr. Q, and you said, Greame Lategan, you are not doing your job as director, I want disciplinary action to be taken. It should happen straight away.
So here's my thing. I first want to make a disclaimer. In fact, it's not a disclaimer. It's something that I wish seriously happened, right? You're asking me if I know that your senior executive has KPAs and KPIs. I hope that is the case. Anything is possible in this country. If there's one thing that I've learned in the past couple of years, is that anything in South Africa is actually possible.
It's a basic thing.
Yes. But as I'm listening to you, I feel like you are saying so much that touches on leadership. And I would love you to marry this. I saw on your website that actually you very much are rooted into the business of coaching
That's correct.
and
Yes. Culture.
leadership
Culture strategy.
management and all the fancy terms that are used in that space. Uh, how do we ensure that we actually get capable leaders? Because again, with everything that has been happening in the Nelson
True.
Mandela Bay Municipality, one of the things that I've been seeing and which has been, I would say, a trend when I went through comments was touching on leadership. And people were saying, we just need effective leaders. We need somebody who is competent and whatnot. And this is not to point fingers at anyone. Again,
100%.
another
Not at all.
disclaimer. How do we get there? How do we achieve? In fact, how do we even identify somebody who is a capable leader? Because sorry, again, I want to touch on another comment. One person was saying that the reason why we're here is because we select leaders based on their political affiliations and not necessarily because they deserve to be there.
Therein lies the conundrum problem that we're having, I suppose, if that's good English. It is perhaps that therein lies the challenge. So I would love for us as a country to put our political affiliations one side. If I own the municipality, if it belonged to me, I would want to hire right the first time, because hiring people, I'm in the business of people management. Hiring people is the greatest expense that a company can undergo. It costs you more money to hire people, Dr. Q, than it is to retain them, which leads us to the next issue, talent retention. We are struggling as a municipality to retain the talent. I tell you why. The culture is broken. The culture is toxic inside the municipality. 80%, 90% of the people hate their jobs. They don't like what they do. I work with municipalities, and they dislike their jobs to such an extent that it disengages them. They become disenfranchised. They are disconnected. I can use all the disses. They just exit. They exit from the workplace. They're there. They get a salary, 8 to 5. Nothing's done. So they are completely demotivated. So the culture is very toxic. And you will find that the reason why a lot of that happens is because 80% of the time your directors and your managers are constantly reporting and sitting in meetings and, from one thing to the, a council meeting lasted the other day, nearly 2 days? I'm melodramatic, but it's crazy. You can't manage that way. So if it's me, I would say I want to hire the right people at the right time, irrespective of what they look like. As long as you can prove to me that you know what it is that requires a turnaround strategy and you are going to do what you tell me you're going to do, I'm going to hire you. I don't care where you come from. I don't care your age. I don't care how many years experience you got. Those things set aside. But the problem is our hiring. Can I call it, the way we hire people? 5 years experience, 6 degrees. You know what I'm trying to get? You got it. Rubbish. I know engineers that haven't got one qualification, but they've built bridges that span rivers.
I know a pilot who flew people for more than 20 years without a license.
Can you ever? Okay, all right, but that's just like not on, But you understand, it's like going. We are currently running this municipality like a hospital. We go in, okay, and we get to exactly like the pilot story. We go in, we go and see a doctor, and they perform a surgery on us, okay. But we don't know how qualified the doctor is. We don't know how qualified and how experienced. Is he or she a good surgeon? We don't know these things. We just imagine that. So you don't go get into an airplane. You were using the example. You don't get in the airplane and say, "Excuse me, I first want to check the pilot." You trust wholeheartedly that the pilot is going to be able to get you there and back. If you understand where I'm going with the process. But we can't retain our talent. We don't hire properly, and we don't attract the right talent. PE and like many metros, have got a problem to attract talent. So I'll tell you why. The reason is because it's too volatile, it's too uncertain, it's too complex. We hire a top engineer, let's say in the roads department, to come in and help us to fix our roads, and we think they're a godsend. But when they get in here, they can't even buy a pen. It takes them 3 months to be able to buy this pen. It's red tape, bureaucracy. And that's what's killing the talent inside our organization. So if I was in the municipality and I was somehow, I could make those changes, because you've got the Municipal Systems Act and you've got the Municipal Finance Management Act. So there's a whole bunch of we are so regulated in municipalities, and for good cause, because corruption is the order of the day, but it is just so overregulated. So we can't retain our talent.
While you're there, I'm thinking of my 3 friends. One actually just left last week. I'm thinking of 3 of my friends who left the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality, who weren't even directly working for the municipality. One was working for a bank. The other was working for, I think, Kucha. I'm not sure if that is a parastatal. I would love to believe it is a parastatal.
Kucha Development, IDZ.
IDZ.
I think, yeah.
And then the other was working. Okay, actually, this last one is working for the was working for the municipality here.
Oh, okay.
All of them literally said nothing works in this city. We are leaving. They all went back to Joburg and Pretoria. Right now, I just want to make an example with these first 2. They are not directly involved with local governance whatsoever, but you find them in their respective spaces in corporate saying that nothing moves in this city, and they would say that nothing is actually functional in the municipality. And when you think about it deeply, you get to see that actually there is a direct link between business and municipal governance here.
And yes,
when this one fails, when government fails to deliver, business is affected. And I feel like that is where we are in the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality, because people are frustrated everywhere. They're like, there's just no movement. When there is no service delivery, when people don't have water, they don't have power, they will not want to stay in that city. And economic growth is not going to be something that we realize anytime. Yes. So I really do wish that we may find ourselves in a position where we see some changes. But I want to come to you and ask a provocative question, actually, because you are entering the political. You're entering the political space, and you have decided that you want to be part of the change. You want to drive change in some way or the other. And here you are getting this opportunity, and you say, I actually want to serve in VF Plus. Why particularly VF Plus?
Well, before I go there, so just coming back to your phenomenal kind of story that you've told, a city cannot function without investment. I mean, it's an economic reality. Nothing will function unless money is coming into the city. We've lost more jobs in Nelson Mandela over the last 18 months to 24 months than probably any metro anywhere in South Africa. And we lose.
I'm on my way out.
Well, please don't go.
I'm joking.
Okay, please. Thank you. You had me like all red-faced there for a minute. Jeez, today I was becoming depressed. But we're losing people, by the thousands. They're looking for opportunities. And Joburg is not greener. Cape Town is not better. I can tell you that right now. We're all struggling. So money is the thing. Freedom Front Plus. For the longest time, the Freedom Front Plus, for me, politics was about always the opposition to the African National Congress. We historically, in the beginning of my time as a young man, I never voted at all. I never voted in the national elections, and I never voted in municipal elections. In fact, that's how I was uneducated about politics. And then with a lot of changes in the political parties at the time, CP, NP, I don't know what not all, and of course the rise of the mighty ANC at the time, and then the later coming in of the smaller parties, and then there were like 300 odd parties running. You were spoiled for choice. It's like going to a shop and which chocolate do I buy, if you know what I'm getting at. And you could make your choice based on your feelings, really, on how you felt on the day. But obviously, the Democratic Alliance and the ANC became the two main players, let's say 8 to 10 years ago, the national elections as well as the municipal elections, etc. So it was one or the other. It became like the Republican or the Democrat Party in the United States, so to speak. You know what I mean? There were just two front runners. Here's where it changed for me. For the longest time, I was voting for principles of a particular party that whose values didn't sit well with me, but they were the obvious choice. Does that make sense to you? It was like the obvious choice. Like if somebody would say to you, I'm voting for the ANC because it's the obvious choice. I'm voting for the MK because it's the obvious choice for me. And that's how I voted for the longest time. And I did a lot of time reflection and etc. into my values. So my values as a human being, my personal values are biblically aligned. I'm not religiously inclined because I believe that religion is kind of very traditional. So I have a relationship one-on-one with Jesus Christ. That's kind of where I am. I struggle with that as well already because I have a lot of issues that I've got to deal with as a human being. So it's those issues that resonate with me. The minority, obviously, the fact that they stand for minority values. But you must remember that the Freedom Front Plus for the longest time was not represented well because it was seen to be a whites-only party and it was an Afrikaner type party and it stood only for farmers, etc. And that kind of mentality. So we were swayed in society to not split votes, if that's what people are trying to get at. And I made the concerted choice to say, look, I'm conservative by nature, and I'm going to vote for a party that stands to the values or resonates with me, the values that I want to kind of put into government. I looked at the performance of the ministers from the GNU. And I like what I see, specifically with Dr. Groenewald, who's doing very, very good things in correctional services, by the way, Dr. Q. Go figure. And, and some other ministers are performing very well across the board, from the African National Congress as well as the PA. So there's a bunch of good performance. That one resonated with me. So when I joined the party, I kind of did some research and I found that there was a possibility that candidacy would be available, and I applied to be a candidate, and they've accepted that. But you have to go through a long, stringent, very strict process before that even becomes a reality. But in the meantime, that's where I am, and that's why I went that route. If that makes kind of any sense to you, and I'm very excited. Very excited, man.
Pardon me, I follow politics like I'm like it's nobody's business. And I just want to say, if that was your criteria in actually trying to see who is doing better than who, I would say based on the performance on ministerial positions, Peter Groenewald is not number one currently. Not even the top three. Not even the top three for that matter.
Yeah.
If anything, I would say you should have gone for wherever Barbara Creasy is, because right now she's actually topping the charts. Yeah. And I'm actually happy for Barbara.
Yeah.
And the team. I think they've done a stellar job in transport. But I also wanted to say witfully, in a witty manner, that we started seeing the ANC-DA rivalry shortly after the National Party sort of like was abolished, if it was abolished, or was absorbed by the DA.
Yes, that's correct.
So my thing with VF Plus is having followed a lot of commentary on social media, in your tabloids and all these public platforms.
Platform for social media.
I'm seeing a lot of people saying that they're actually going to be voting for Oom Groenewald. And these are not just your white people, these are also black people. Definitely. Because they're saying that this is a person who is going to actually bring about the development that we want. And when they talk about these, there would always be a mention of ending crime, bringing back a is it called a death sentence? A death sentence, yes, or death penalty?
Yeah. Death penalty.
Yes, death penalty. And it would be other things. So it seems like people are more actually frustrated because of the high crime that they are observing in this country. And they believe that the person that can actually do that, or that is well positioned to do that, is Peter Groenewald, or Dr. Groenewald is referred to him.
Yes.
And interestingly, when I said I was going to come back to the newspaper article that I was reading earlier, it is on the gangsterism that is taking place in the Western Cape, in your Cape Flats and Mitchell's Plain in particular. But there's a reference that is made to the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality there. They mentioned 3 areas. I don't know the other 2, and I've forgotten them. I forgot to bring the newspaper with me. But one of those 3 areas is Galvindale. That one I do remember. And when I read all these comments, and when I read all these articles that are published by the likes of Sunday Times and your Daily Suns and all these others, I really wonder if really we would be better positioned if we aligned more with VF Plus. But then the question that I have, like some people that aren't too familiar with VF Plus, would be, what are the actual values of the party? In order for us to say, okay, fine, we will be voting for VF Plus. I mean, we know about the DA and the ANC and I would say EFF to some extent.
That's correct.
But we don't know much about VF Plus, and it is still very much stigmatized, especially by some members of your black population, if I may put it like that.
Yes, so they would not quite know what they're looking at, understanding its values. Am I correct?
Yeah. So, what are the values of VF Plus?
So, I'm going to ask you a question. Not knowing the Freedom Front Plus, okay, what do you think their values are? If you just look at it from now, what do you think they stand for? And let's see if we can kind of get that going. I need to throw this back at you, and I know you are interviewing me, but just from what you see.
Okay. You may not like my response because
let's go for it.
Yeah. The reason why I'm saying that you may not like my response is because not so long ago, Peter Groenewald was vouching for the death penalty, right?
Okay.
And so my thing for him is, okay, this is somebody who may lean more towards dictatorship, but he may still be good-hearted. Like we see with one of the African presidents. I'm not going to mention names when it comes to this because I don't want to die. But what I could marry that with also is that he could be mistaken for somebody who does not necessarily understand the concept of human rights in its entirety by virtue of him vouching for that. So, to give you a response that you were not expecting, I would say it's one party that actually doesn't align with the concept of Ubuntu as we commercialize it nowadays. And I use the term commercialize purposefully Ubuntu. And frustratingly because I feel like it is abused these days. But yes,
the term Ubuntu or the actual application of it, it's
the term Ubuntu is abused.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
my thinking about the VF plus.
All right. Okay. So let's get on to the dictatorship. That is actually not true. That is just propaganda. It would have appeared so because the Afrikaner symbolically has had this stigma attached to it, that it was, or it runs as a dictatorship, and it was right-wing minded, etc., 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 and it is basically one of the architects of apartheid, etc., etc., etc. Now, I'm not old enough to know the whole history of that, but I'm also not too old to kind of to understand that, to realize that that's really not the truth at all. um, Values are, let me put it this way: you work for a company and you join, let's say, can I use a company? Let's say we use Dr. Q's cool drinks. Can we use that? Dr. Cool's soda pops, right? Okay, so you start your company and you have a set of values that you put on the wall. There's like 10 of them, integrity, honesty, etc., etc., all these wonderful values. Now you have to employ people into your organization. Now, people want a job, number one. That's identity. They want to have work. They want to get employed or be employed. So they'll join your company and they will say to you, I'm aligned to your values, but it's because I want the job. But going into the job, Dr. Q, you kind of through the years realize that you're not aligned to all the values. Some of them are okay with you. Honesty is good, etc. But you're not really one for communication, if you know what I'm getting at. So the point I'm trying to make is, not every value in every organization resonates with every employee, or can I call it person that belongs to that organization. So let's say the Freedom Front might have 10 values. I'm not saying they do. Let's say they've got 10 of them. 7 of them might resonate with me. You get what I'm saying? And all 10 of them might resonate with me at this moment in time. But for me, when the Freedom Front Plus says, we are committed to communities that realize themselves, that are it's self-determination to a degree. We recognize protection, the promotion of rights and the interests of everybody, irregardless of the color of your skin. There's no holds barred. You are not barred from joining the party because you're perhaps African or you're colored, for that matter. In fact, we've seen a surge of membership from the spectrum of different demographics. So he's not a dictator. I've never met him per se. I will still hopefully have that opportunity. But if he's something to be understood in the media, and what he does and how he speaks, it's a kind of leadership that resonates with me. So that's number one. The leadership resonates with me as a human being. I worked in correctional services, so I understand the problems they have. Again, it resonates with me. Do you understand? So you might not be number one performer. Barbara might be doing very well, but that doesn't resonate with me. This does, if you get what I'm saying. So it's a value: cleaning up prisons, managing property, putting them to work, kind of things. So those are the things that kind of affect me deeply. Number one values that they have is the Christian-related, biblical, godly values. Now, one might say, well, the ACDP's got that,
I was about to say.
Yeah, they've got it too. But it's maybe the Christian determination, or it's that kind of it's very difficult to put it into words, but it just didn't resonate with me. Remember, I'm English speaking, as a matter of interest. And the Freedom Front Plus is very set on, Afrikaner minorities still being a mother tongue, teaching with your mother tongue in schools, etc. Xhosa, whatever language, if you feel that should be in your particular schools. In your society. But we are. It's really centered around. As a young Freedom Front Plus member, it's really centered around the values that appeal to me: good performance, determination, obviously black economic empowerment is something that they don't stand for. Affirmative action, obviously, that everybody has fair and equal representation, no matter the color of your skin, because that is still dividing society. We can debate that all night, I suppose. You know what I'm getting at. On that note, I've worked and I've been the beneficiary of employment where previous African people did not get the job. And I've also, in my later years, been subjected to affirmative action where somebody else got the job. And the reason is because I was white. So, and it's never bothered me. It doesn't, I'm not concerned by it. I'm not bitter. I don't have any, it's just that that's who I am as a human being. But their views on crime, albeit that they might be advocating for the death penalty, I haven't come across that particular value right now. It's not something that I.
Well, I don't think we can call it a value. I was just making an example.
It's not a value. It's just one of their things that they were looking at. But I haven't come across that right now. So for me, it is really and truly about stopping discrimination. Stopping specific race-based laws in South Africa, protection of your property rights. That's a big topic in South Africa. I mean, you'll know that.
Of course.
Implement your mother tongue, protection of your minority rights. These are values that sit with me. And, I just believe at the end of the day, we're still very divided on this, Dr. Q. I'm hoping that it'll fix it. Another thing that will happen is coalition politics. It's going to happen. So, obviously, the main goal of the Freedom Front Plus is to make sure that the African National Congress doesn't get the majority. But yeah, who's to know? Who's to say?
No, would you rather have another party getting the majority than the ANC?
I would not. Look, obviously, we would love to be the majority in South Africa. I mean, that is any party's ultimate goal.
Okay,
but
of course.
Yeah, the reality is in South Africa, we are a country with coalition politics. It's here to stay.
Okay, so suppose that the ANC doesn't get a majority and you've accepted the fact that the VF Plus is not getting a majority in this particular round. So who would you vouch for and why?
Sorry, I didn't get the question quite yet. So who am I vouching for?
Who would you vouch for? Who would you vouch for to get a majority apart from the ANC and the VF Plus?
No one. No one. I wouldn't. Look, obviously, I would want the Freedom Front Plus to get the majority, but we are realistic in our movement and our goals, etc. And I'm far removed from top leadership. They know what they're doing at the top there and how they're going to position the party for the next elections, which I believe will be a phenomenal election, to say the least. Because
I think so too.
Yeah, I think so too. We're seeing a shift in politics in South Africa. People are starting to vote with their values and their conscience. You know what I mean? They're not voting fear. There's no fear-based voting anymore. I think we can blame the GNU for that. The GNU certainly opened up the rivers and the tributaries for us to have a wider variety of, this appeals to me, that resonates with me, this is what I want out of this. So I'm looking for somebody in government and in municipality that's got my voice. One of your problems that you're sitting with is if there's too high a majority, the other councillors are actually irrelevant.
Okay.
They're irrelevant. I can have 10 seats. I'm irrelevant because I can't influence the budget. I can't influence who you're hiring. I can't influence what you're voting for. I can't influence where the IDP's been spending its money. Those are things. But when you've got balance, we've got accountability amongst the political parties. So who do I vote for?
Okay, I get that. And I think in some way I'm in agreement with you. Probably because I think I like where we are headed to as a country, given the experience we've had with the current GNU at a national level. I can't say much about the municipal GNUs or PNUs or local national, whatever you call them. God, all these abbreviations are too much. But all these unities.
Yeah,
Um,
lots of them.
because I feel like at a local level, there's just always some chaos going on. We saw it in Tshwane, we saw it in Gauteng, we saw it, I think, at some point in Durban, KZN, but we
Yes,
are not exempt. We've seen it here
that's
in the
true.
Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality as well. But I wanted to also come and God, the question is escaping me now. But maybe as I recollect that, I
Mm,
oh now it's not a question actually, it's a warning. Maybe
mm,
not particularly for the VF plus, but for everybody that is in the political space right now.
true.
I think you would be aware of what is happening in the political space in as far as
Arena. They
Gauteng
call
is
it the
concerned.
political. Yes.
Yes, we've got our DA friends who are running these, I would say, mass popularized campaigns
Yes. Mm,
through the failures of whoever is leading currently in Johannesburg. And I've spoken to at least, I would say, and I'm not exaggerating numbers, I've spoken to at least 20 people already, and about 16 of them have told me that they're actually going to leave their respective spaces and go to Johannesburg to vote for uh, the opposition. I'm
correct.
not
Yes.
saying that people shouldn't do that, but I just want to bring that to your attention because my wish is for all municipalities to be served justly, and for us to achieve that, people need to
Mm,
vote where they are. So my, I suppose my plea to all parties that are going to run for the elections later this year
yeah.
would be uh, just make sure that you run those campaigns and you keep your people wherever they are so that you get good
I
numbers.
agree. No, I concur. You know what I mean? And but what I won't concede to is these the campaigns. Everybody's running these campaigns. But yeah, and some are phenomenal campaigns. I wish all the political parties the very best
Mm,
inside
mm,
their plight for governance, so to speak. But
mm,
there is a sure thing on the horizon that people are no longer voting based on what they see on social media, based on what the popular vote, and based on how you can badmouth another politician or badmouth the ANC or badmouth this party or whatever. Those days are over. We've got a very educated, can I call it, voter base now.
mm,
And here's where it's going to get very interesting. The people that didn't vote in the last two elections, they are going to be the kingmakers
mm, mm. I believe so too.
for
I believe
whichever
so too.
party. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
definitely.
whichever party.
Definitely.
So yeah, so as long as campaigning is healthy and we keep it above board, and yes, there'll be a bunch of dings at each one, and I guess it's going to happen, but that's
Okay.
going to be yeah.
Second last question. Uh, totally unrelated to this, but you will
Yes,
see how it relates to this because
no
that will
problem.
be my parting shot. The Trump question.
Yes.
Tell me your. Whew, I think this one will be an interesting one, actually. Your
I
thoughts on
like
Donald?
Trump. Just go
Your
for it.
thoughts. I don't care whether you like him or not, but I just
Yeah,
want your honest opinion about the man and what
yeah.
he's doing currently.
Interesting. Interesting. So I've got to be very honest with you. I love Donald Trump. I really do.
Okay.
Partly because I just want to get up every morning to see what crap he got up to the day before, because he really gives me a good laugh on so many kind of platforms. Just the pure dominating force that he has, and perhaps some arrogance to that. I guess. Um, and the other thing for me that's pretty appealing is that he says and calls a spade a spade. It's kind of where I am now. I'm in America, so I can't really and truly say how every American is feeling, but I do know it's a divided nation. I can say that in a heartbeat. South Africa is a divided country. There is not a country in the world today that's not divided on its politics. But to get back to the Trump question at this moment in time, I'm not so happy about the war that's going on, because it is affecting the countries that are still have this mindset that they are a developing country. South Africa should have been a developed country 20 years ago, but let's call it 10 years ago, to be fair, because our democracy is very young. But we should not still be looking at ourselves as a developing country. I'm not happy with the fact that we've aligned ourselves to specific countries which are not US approved, so to speak. If that be the case, I think we should just remain completely neutral. We keep our cards open, we keep our investment opportunities open. You know what I'm saying? We've got too many problems as a nation to worry about what other countries are currently doing. I just feel that. That's my personal view. It's how I feel as a citizen of our country. I'm very convicted by that. I think we've got so many issues that we've got to fix out and fix up and sort out. Poverty is a big problem. Education are major issues. Just basic service delivery. We are those are the things that really bother me, Dr. Q. I mean, I work in education space. We're not even addressing education in this country. So those are the things. To final word on Donald Trump. He is what he is. He's here to stay. Get used to him. He's going to rock the world. He's flipping the entire world on its kind of circumference. It's on its head, and we are going to have to adapt. So love him or hate him, he's going to change the way we do business, and this is what a municipality should be doing: is doing business. We should not be reactive. We should be proactive.
I agree on the latter part, but I just want to rewind a bit and make a comment on the part where you said you don't think that you should be focusing on what other nations are actually focusing on or what they're doing or their politics. I am of a different school of thought, and by virtue of myself having done diplomacy studies, one thing I know for a fact is that we always need to be in harmony with others. Especially if I contextualize this and put it in our South African context, I don't think we have a muscle really for us to deal with our own problems without the intervention of other stakeholders. I'll refer to them in a language that I think you would understand by virtue of you being in a leadership space. And I say that because we've seen China coming to the aid of South Africa. We've seen America itself coming to the aid of South Africa and other nations as well. And when we produce, when we come up with our own commodities, I don't think we would see any exponential growth if we only trade within South Africa and not really position ourselves to a point where we are in alignment with other nations, right? I'm in agriculture, and I think about all the citrus farmers that we have here in the Eastern Cape. Most of the produce that comes from here is not sold in South Africa. That's one example. And America is one of our biggest buyers. Europe is also another biggest buyer of ours, right? So we need to get those relationships super 100%. Sorted. So we must actually be bothered when there's a breakdown when it comes to
I think you raise an important point, but I think maybe just to take it back to what I was trying to say to you is it's the politics that I'm concerned about. If you say, and by your own admission, you've said that America buys most of its citrus from us. We should not be alienating America. We should not be fighting it. We should be sitting back and saying, okay, you guys do what you need to do. We still want your trade, etc. We still want your business. And yes, China, we also want your business, etc., etc. But we should not be in the picking. I mean, most of the political parties have said this. We should not be on the in the picking sides game. From as a developing country, for our economic values and our economic needs as a country, we should really and truly be playing a very safe game with regards to who buys the stuff that we export. Where are we getting our money from? Keeping our farmers in business, keeping our industries in business. These are problems that we have, Dr. Q. I mean, if we alienate the United States, who's going to buy our fruit?
Yeah, it's not all parties that have been saying that. It's the DA and VF plus.
Okay.
But with that said, I do think that our current government, the coalition government, has really been trying to actually lay some common ground with the United States of America to say, look, we want to work with you, but there's been some misunderstandings from the other side. I would really not say where it's fault in any way here. Rather, I think the other side actually has our narrative incorrectly. They've gotten an incorrect picture of what
What
South Africa
narrative do you
really
think
is.
they're referring to?
I'm sorry, please repeat that.
So what narrative do you think they are referring to?
I mean,
Brief
I
me on that.
mean, I mean, one obvious one, the white genocide in South Africa. I mean, that's one of the things
100%.
that
Yeah.
have driven all this, I would say, economic breakdown we see that has taken place between the two nations. And you know for a fact that that is not entirely true. We've never seen any white genocide in South Africa, wouldn't you say?
Look, I'm not saying that I concede. I don't think that there's genocide in South Africa. Certainly not. I mean, I can't for 1 minute, think otherwise. I mean, I'm a South African. You understand? But I cannot deny that we have a lot of problems with crime in our country, and crime is in general. One of the things that we have to understand is that, and this is based on the farm murders, which I don't really want to get into. The hype around the murdering of farmers, predominantly white farmers. And we can debate all night on that, and I don't think that's the platform that we're on. But the fact of the matter is, it's a contentious issue in South Africa. There
Mm.
is debate to be had around it, and we certainly believe that it should be classified as a priority crime from the Freedom Front
Mm.
Plus.
Wait, what must be classified as a priority crime?
Uh, farm attacks should be. That's the feeling that we have. But
And
I
by
think
farm, sorry to cut you. And by farm murders, you mean uh, this is regardless of skin color and whatnot. I ask this because I know
100%.
whenever such narratives are being driven, the first thing that comes to a person's mind is, okay, so which farmer are we talking about? Are we talking about black farmers or white farmers? It's always the case, uncomfortable as it is sometimes. But I wanted you to give me a bit of clarity there. Now, I have two books in this
Yeah.
house. One I got in the library, and the other I bought in a secondhand bookshop. And they talk about farm murders. One talks about farm murders, and one talks about Madiba's drive to end crime, particularly in farms. Particularly in
I
farms,
haven't had the pleasure. Yes.
your small and large scale commercial farms. And I think the farm situation, the farm murder situation is not something that we're actually starting to experience now. It's something that has existed even before we breached into democracy. And I can even give titles of these books in the description of this episode when it is dropped, just so people can see that I'm not cooking these things from the top of my head. And yeah, I appreciate the fact that you are not racializing this, because where I get uncomfortable is when people say that the killings are actually driven towards whites and not blacks, because we see a lot of black people dying in farms as
Not
well.
not what not what we've said at all, and you will
Mm.
agree and concede to that. That's not what we're saying.
Of course,
The
yeah.
freedom, the fact of the matter is, the Freedom Front Plus in its whole process, and I mean, you can go and read that. It's available to you. It's the only party who demands that farm attacks be declared as a priority
Mm.
crime. So there's no color that's put into that context.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Graham, I feel like we've been talking, and this has been a
Wow, I can go
wonderful
on, man. I
conversation.
enjoyed this.
It's been a wonderful conversation.
Yes,
Sorry,
certainly
I think
has.
I think there's that part of me that actually is so much in love with politics, and Yeah, so I could ask you questions that are endless. But
Yeah, no, sure.
before I give you my parting shot, which is very brief, I would love to get your parting shot uh, before I steal your line.
Am I selling myself as a political candidate, or what am I doing? Well, cool.
Sell yourself as a political candidate,
No,
more especially as it
I'm actually
relates to
not
the
going to
Nelson
do that.
Mandela Bay.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to do that. But I am going to talk about Nelson Mandela Bay. I mean, that's kind of where we are. You're around the corner
Thank
from
you.
me, First and foremost, thank you for the work that you're doing, because it's phenomenal work. We need more of this. We need great discussions. We need honest, open, transparent discussions. What I don't want to do is sit, across from somebody. Doesn't matter in what platform I'm on and what discussion. Doesn't matter what your demographic is, and have a fear that what I'm saying is going to be construed as a problem, or as an issue for them, and offensive. And that's not the idea here. So my parting shot for you is that I would love for us in Nelson Mandela Bay, as we progress to the 2026 elections, is to look at the real burning issues that are affecting us as a municipality, and
Mm.
separate those issues from trying to garner votes through fear politicking, etc., etc., etc. I'm getting to the point where I'm saying I don't want this. I'm looking for political parties to play fair, to do well, to do good, to be transparent, to really and truly play the right game with regards to trying to sway voters into voting for their particular parties. Doesn't matter who you vote for. But at the same time, I want to say this: vote smartly, vote
Yeah.
carefully, vote with an educated mindset, vote with emotional intelligence, and do your research, do your homework. Check out the political candidates. Look at the history of the parties. You get what I'm saying. Don't go and vote just because one party says that it is the only savior that can be, or this is a legacy vote for us kind of thing. And the next thing I want to throw over the bow is, don't let political parties that are now huge, for whatever reason, tell you that you are splitting votes if you're voting for smaller parties. There's thousands of them, by the way. Smaller parties. You're not doing that. You're opening great discussion. You're opening great panels, and those parties hold parties accountable. At the end of the day, there's no such thing as a split vote, as far as I'm concerned, and I know there will be millions of people that disagree with me. But vote
Mm.
against your values, and vote against the things that really and truly resonate with you. Pick your leaders wisely, because this is a crucial election for us.
Mm.
And that's kind of where I am.
Okay, lovely.
It's kind of
Lovely.
where I am.
You see, I wanted to give my parting shot, but you just made me think now. And you mentioned
Quick.
that people must make intellectual decisions here.
100%.
You
Yes.
said
Yeah.
educational, whatever term that you
Yeah.
used, and my
Educational.
question
Yeah.
after. My question in response to that is, what about the many that are not educated? So how do they
Yes.
get to determine who to vote for? But that's a rhetorical
Yeah.
question. You don't have to respond to that.
Yeah. I would love to, but I won't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Well, I once learned as a law enforcement officer that I was told, we were conditioned. You see this mindset? We were conditioned that ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Mm.
And I came across a manager and a leader very late on in my career who said to me that ignorance is an excuse,
Mm.
for not obeying the law, so to speak. And I said to him, no, that's not how we were taught. No. He said, that's exactly how it should be. There are still large segments of our population that are uneducated, and are being positioned to vote historically. So it's very important for me that we, as political parties, go there and go and educate. Not try, well, obviously we're going to try and convince, but not try and convince based on emotions and, this and that, but on real facts, real performance, real issues. And that's how you'll educate people. But you know what the issue is? We don't go there. This is going to be a different year. And I think that's something that political parties will have to do very differently.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Graham. My parting short, because I know you and I are not going to stop talking. It would actually draw on the words of, again, not my words. I was reading Sunday Times. Get yourself a copy of Sunday Times from yesterday, 5 April. You would see there's an article that is written by, I think her name is, the author's name is not indicated. But they refer to Donald Trump as the orange one. So in the words of the orange one, make Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality great again. I want to read about it. I want everybody from back home to read about the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality and say, I want that to be my municipality, like I did back in 2002.
I concede and I agree with you. That is the way it should be. Let's make this bay great again.
Graham, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate you. Have a fantastic evening, and I wish you everything of the best, and I will run into you shortly.
Thank you.
Awesome.